So welcome back, everybody. This is Paul again. I've been making this series about esoteric astrology and esoteric psychology and so on. And this is going to be the fifth in the series, and it's really complicated. And I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, that's not very audacious of you to try to talk about psychology and so on. But basically, I'm trying to put in modern language what I understand of ancient teachings and so on about the soul and life force and the practice of meditation that I've done for many years and so on, and all the other things that I've researched and so on. And I basically have said many times that our self, our true self as described in, say, the Upanishads, I call a field of energies. It's a superconscious presence within us that senses. Our awareness that we have goes beyond our physical body. We don't think of it that way sometimes, because when we have our ego, imagine all the ideas that you have during the day, thinking about this and thinking about that, and are they just, in some ways you don't have any physical space because they're just in your head. Well, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And some of them are related to your body and some of them are not. For example, you say, okay, well, I got to go running or something. That's very physical, obviously. But you say, well, tomorrow I'm going to solve this problem in my head, or I'm going to think about my relationship or something. What is it that we identify with? Is it something that we just like, okay, if you ask somebody, okay, well, who are you? What are you? Well, today I'm thinking about this, and today, well, it's a lot more complicated than that. We're not just a manufactured identity. We're not just a bunch of thoughts and ideas. We're actually a living presence field awareness with that superconscious awareness. For example, let's say here I've drawn a body and sort of like made a little aura around it. There are presences within us and energy fields, heat, light, coming out of us, sounds, that are actually producing a very subtle field, and the subtle interaction with external fields produces the subconscious, or what I call the superconscious, recording and impressions. There's a name for this thing in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Basically impressions, samskaras. We might say little coils of energy, just kind of like, remember, this is like light energy. This is a very amazing system that we have. Completely amazing. It's not just a bunch of little chakras lined up and this and that. It's a little more complicated than that. Quite a lot more, actually. What we are basically, the physical senses are only a part of the mechanism that we have. The electromagnetic organism, which I've drawn the field here, senses these changes in this flux. For example, when we go to the grocery store or something, we step on something, or we get into a certain presence, there's a motion sensor. What that motion sensor is doing, it sends out a little beam of light, a little pulse of infrared light, a whole bunch of pulses, and if it gets a bounce back, it goes, hello, does an action. This system that we have sends out energy like that. It's always doing that, constantly. And it brings back impressions so that we can sense. You know how sometimes you can just sense somebody's right next to it, even if your hair on your skin? Because there's sensors there. There's a presence here that senses very subtle things. These, every hair is like a little antenna, you might say. So, this superconscious identity, which we often have called the subconscious, I really believe that's totally mislabeled, because what really is happening, it's not like we have this self and then we have this pool of subconscious stuff. What's happening is there's a pool of superconscious stuff, and the thing that we call ourselves is the unconscious part. We need to make this bridge from the conscious brain to the superconscious soul. And I made this little diagram here. Some people will recognize it. But let's say, for example, the intersection of a set. You have like this super energy cell, the soul, some field, some vast field that has this vehicle, it's a presence in this vehicle, the totality of it, a sensing organism, electromagnetic bioorganism with a sensing mechanism, very sophisticated. The body is one part of it, just the body, the physical body, all the tissues and so on. And our mind in there, we mix some of our body sensation and our thoughts with some superconscious energy. We have some dreams, and we have some subliminal contact, and we get inspirations and so on. There is some connection there with our super energy soul. So the intersection of that is our ego, what we call ourselves. Okay, well, if you become more conscious of the super energy and more attuned to your body as well, you're naturally, your conscious being, which you're consciously aware of, is much bigger. Some people are more aware of their body and their whole conscious system than others. Now, this thing that I call the super energy soul energy is extremely smart. It's just really like, imagine, okay, let's say you have like, subliminally, you have antennas all around you spending like maybe 100 yards. In certain circumstances especially. All that consciousness is part of you, not just the thoughts, because the part of us that's real remains after the thinking stops. There are some people, and sometimes we get in our habits, and we think, if my thinking stops, I'll be dead. No. When your thinking stops, you see what life is. Because babies don't think. They're very conscious of this life. They just came in, it's like every breath is, ooh, wow, and now they're breathing in something, okay? Imagine coming out from the womb and coming out and breathing air. Imagine coming out from the air and breathing a superconscious sense of spirit awareness, electrical energy, that sustains us and is our true self. Now, the ego is sometimes just like a backseat driver, trying to drive this way and that way, you know. But the soul is the real chariot, and the soul is very gracious. Well, okay, I know we have something to say, whatever, you know. But the thing is, when our egocentric behavior starts controlling and getting in the way of what we deeply naturally know is where we need to go, intuitively, a conflict develops. Now, our brain and our physical energy, this intersection creates thought forms, energized images and streams, because the electrical nature of our brain and all the things can actually form strong images of patterns and images that we very sharply create with our mind. And those can fill our space here and start to precipitate out. We create things in our brain. When you create them very clearly, or in case if you're very angry or otherwise emotional, you can suddenly create a presence or an energy bolt, you might say. So I'll have to talk about that in the next segment here, but there's ways that we can be more aware of what is being perceived sent out in the extremities of our presence and use that energy. So I'll talk about that in the next segment.